The fourth prerequisite for Algebra 2 is factoring quadratics. We have been multiplying polynomials, and now we're going to work backwards. For example, we've been taking x plus 3 times x plus 2 and getting x squared plus 5x plus 6. Now we're going to go backwards. So we're going to be given something like x squared plus 5x plus 6, and we're going to turn it into x plus 3 times x plus 2. The one thing you really need to remember is to make sure you look for a greatest common factor first. So here are the steps. You're going to check for a greatest common factor. You're going to make a table. Use those numbers to break up b. Factor the greatest common factor out. Watch your signs, and write your answer. So here, the first step is always to find the greatest common factor for each term. So the greatest common factor between 4, 20, and 56 is 4. So if I divide each term by 4, I get 1, 5, and negative 14. So then I multiply the number in front of the first term times the last term. So that's 1 times negative 14. And that's what goes in the multiplication side of my table. The middle term, b, goes in the right side, the plus side of your table. So you're trying to find two numbers that multiply to be negative 14 but add to be 5. Well, negative 2 times 7 is negative 14, and negative 2 plus 7 is 5. This takes a lot of guess and check, and if you need help with it, please make sure you ask your teacher. So we're going to split the middle term, the 5, into these two numbers. So it now becomes n squared, we just brought it down from the top, negative 2n, that came from our table, plus 7n, also coming from our table, minus 14, which came from the original problem. We just brought it down. Now we divide it in half, and we find the greatest common factor between the terms on the left and the terms on the right. So the greatest common factor between n squared and negative 2n is just n. So now we have n times n minus 2, because I have to look at this as, if I take out an n times what gives me n squared? And n times what gives me negative 2n? So the things that are left are n and negative 2. Now what's the largest thing that divides 7n and negative 14? Well, that's 7. But be careful and watch your signs. So you have a 7 here, and 7 times n is 7n, and 7 times what? Negative 2 is negative 14. The pieces in your parentheses should always match. If they don't, you've done something wrong. Finally, we bring down our greatest common factor. That's where that 4 comes from. Then we write the parts in parentheses, so the n minus 2, the pieces that match, and then we put together the pieces on the outside of the parentheses, the n plus 7, and that's our final answer. So let's look at example number 2. We need to check first to see if there's a greatest common factor. There is here. A 4 will come out of 4, 38. I'm sorry, a 2 will come out of 4, 38, and 90. So when I divide each coefficient by 2, I'm left with 2v squared plus 19v plus 45. So I multiply the 2 and the 45 to get what I need to multiply to get. And then I put the 19, the middle term, on the right side. It's what I want to add to get. So I need two numbers that multiply to be 90 and add to be 19. Well, 9 times 10 is 90, and 9 plus 10 is 19. So I bring down my first term. I'm going to split my middle term and bring down my third term. So it'll now look like this. 2v squared plus 9v plus 10v. The 9 and 10 come from your table. And then bring down your 45. Now draw your line down the center. Find your greatest common factor between 2v squared and 9v. That would be v, so you're left with 2v plus 9 on the inside. Then your greatest common factor of 10v plus 45 is 5. So again, you're left with 2v plus 9 on the inside. Remember, your parentheses have to match. If they don't, you've done something wrong. So then we bring down the piece with the parentheses and then the outside pieces. But don't forget your greatest common factor that you took out at the beginning. And this is your solution. Here's another example. Here we have p squared minus 3p minus 28. The greatest common factor here is just 1 between each term, and so we can't take anything out. So we do 1 times negative 28, and that gives me what I need to multiply to get, and then take my middle term and put it on the right side for what I need to add to get. So then what two numbers multiply to be negative 28 but add to be negative 3? Well, this would be negative 7 times 4 is negative 28, and negative 7 plus 4 is negative 3. So then we're going to keep our first term, split our middle term, and keep our third term. This will give us p squared minus 7p plus 4p minus 28. Put your line down the center. What's the greatest common factor of p squared and negative 7p? Well, it's just p. So now I have p times p minus 7. And in the second piece, what's the greatest common factor between 4p and negative 28? That would be 4. Watch your signs here. You take out a 4 and you get p minus 7 again. And so you write down your matching set of parentheses, write down the pieces on the outside, and that gives you p minus 7 times p plus 4. And that's your final solution. This is our final example, 2x squared minus 17x plus 36. These numbers seem kind of large, so you want to make sure you look for a greatest common factor, but there's no number that comes out of 2, 17, and 36. So we multiply the first coefficient by the last. 2 times 36 is 72. We take our middle term, it goes on the right side. We need to find two numbers that multiply to be 72, but add to be negative 17. Well, negative 8 times negative 9 is 72, and negative 8 plus negative 9 is negative 17. So we're going to keep our first term, split the middle term, and keep our third term. This means we keep the 2x squared, we split the negative 17 into negative 8 and negative 9, and we keep 36. We split our problem. The greatest common factor between 2x squared and negative 8x would be 2x. So I take out a 2x and I'm left with x minus 4. So then I look at my second piece. What can come out of negative 9x and a positive 36? Here you have to remember the parentheses have to match. So I'm going to take out a negative 9, but watch my signs, because when I divide by negative 9 here, I get a positive x. And when I divide 36 by negative 9, I get a negative 4. So we've got matching parentheses, so we're good to go. So we bring those down into x minus 4. We combine the outsides to 2x minus 9, and that's the solution. Now you try. Make sure to pause the video, and after trying each one, hit play to see if your answer is correct.